Denver Startup Week. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. DSW has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade. And this week, we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible, our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, our designer track sponsor, Battery 621, and the Public Works. People track sponsor, Exactly, and Spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement to the week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage, Path, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors, all listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget, use the hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experiences and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
The Public Works is a Denver, Colorado-based design, fabrication, and multimedia marketing firm that allows your company to craft an authentic presence to your target audience. For the past 15 years, the Public Works media team has been telling stories with words, pictures, and films. Our unique approach to brand storytelling allows us to get strong reactions and results from our content. We work in experienced and nimble teams with our crew of producers, directors, and cinematographers that all have first-hand experience and international presence. We are fortunate to have amazing clients that allow us to get wherever we need to go with the right tools for the highest production value. Lots of people can take a pretty picture. Just look at Instagram. While we believe our images speak for themselves, what really sets us apart is our decades of experience, our network, and our ability to make shit happen when it counts. We love bringing unexpected partners together to create added value for everyone. And most of all, we love when we finish a job confident that we've not only executed, but elevated the end product, and we know that everyone involved enjoyed the process. Our company was founded on the idea that life is about learning and teaching through every experience. We apply a strict discipline of work hard, play hard, and make great fucking work. We amplify awesome. We surround ourselves with the best and feed off of infectious innovation, ideas, collaboration, and building long-term friendships and partnerships. Contact us anytime for a meeting at our office, golf course, or on the chairlift.
Hi everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Castle, the Designer Track Chair and member of Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Before we get started, the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee acknowledges Indigenous people as the original owners of the land on which we reside, which is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide, ethnic cleansing, stolen land, forced removal, and forced occupation of their territory. And we honor those who have stewarded this land throughout generations and all other Indigenous tribes and nations who call Colorado home. Thank you for joining us in the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, or the combination of those identities. There's something for everyone at DSW, thanks to all of our community members who submitted their best content to make the week what it is. And thank you for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us keep DSW free and accessible to all, especially our designer track sponsor, Battery 621, and the Public Works. With that, please enjoy the session and the entire week.
Hello. There we go. Okay. I was gonna, how do I put myself on the screen? I guess. Hi, everyone. Okay, there we go. Hey, this is Castle, Design Track Chair. Welcome to our 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. That's the first time I've seen myself on that video, and it's pretty frightening. But I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy to be here with Jada from Click Studios. They've been great partners over the years, providing great content and workshops. So with that, here's Jada. Oh, I just want to remind you guys, we have a designer track after party every night from 8 to 10, Monday through Thursday anyway, at the Block Distilling Co. And you get a free drink with your wristband as soon as you arrive. And what else? I don't know. Check out HQ. We've got an amazing art installation there from Chris Haven. And yeah, take it away, Jada. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Castle. Without further ado, I will go ahead and get right into it. 1 second here to just share my screen. Cool. I know at our team, we're more of a Google Hang organization than a Zoom meeting. But yeah, I'll get right into it here, right? So thank you for that introduction, Castle. So we are here at Denver Startup Week in the designer track. Today, my name is Jada Hampton. I'm a digital designer at Click Studios. Click Studios is a digital web agency. Primarily, we design websites, but we also do content strategy. We do some search engine optimization, and we also do a bit of marketing. So we really operate in the digital sphere, right? So just context on what I do and what my background is. Cool. Hopefully, let me minimize this there. Cool. So the screen should be all set up. Okay. Today, I'm going to be talking to you all about how to stop sifting and start designing, reaching your career goals in design, right? So here's our agenda for today. First, I'm going to talk about my background a little bit, just so you guys don't think I'm some random person up here talking who hasn't actually lived through what I'm saying. Next, we'll go into phase 1, which is the self-assessment. After that, phase 2, getting specific about your goals. Phase 3, taking action on your goals. And phase 4, having a support system. After that, we'll talk about some of the advantages that designers have in goal setting. So the nature of our work as designers, no matter what discipline or field of design you're in, we kind of set goals microly in our project briefs that we're given, right? So that's the agenda for today, kind of going through a checklist that you can walk through in terms of setting goals for your design career, as well as just goal setting in general, right? So my journey. So I studied at the University of Illinois. I started as a psychology major, so I thought I was going to become a psychiatrist and be a doctor. But in undergrad, while studying psychology, I realized that it's really technology that I was interested in and user experience in relation to digital experiences, right? So I figured that out later in my undergraduate career, right? So I didn't really have the traditional route into the design field, right? So that's when I added communication as a second major, and I said, well, that'll give me the business component, so maybe I can get a user experience job, right? So I added communication to that, and then after that, I said, you know what, I fully want to go into design, right? So I decided to study at Goldsmiths University of London. That's where I earned a master's in design, expanded practice. From there, I moved back to my hometown of Chicago, where I started as an intern, design intern at Click Studios, right? So within 2 years, so I started as an intern at Click, and then I became a junior designer, and from there I became a mid-level designer, and I did that in 2 years, right? So which is a pretty fairly quick transition into that, right? So this goes to show how you can take a non-traditional route into the design field and still get pretty desirable outcomes. So not sure how many people here are trying to get into the field of design or are already into it. But whether you're trying to get into design and setting goals to start a career in design, or you're already in there and you want to just sharpen your designs and progress in your career with setting your goals, today's talk is for you. So some of my background and what I do in design, I've mentioned I'm a web designer and digital designer at Click. Some of my other backgrounds in design are I'm a 3D artist, a virtual reality technician. So when I was in London, I worked at a place called Hyper Reality, where I did virtual reality. So we curated 3D virtual experiences, sourcing different content from various places in Asia and curating those experiences. Also during that time in London, I was really sharpening my 3D artist skills, right? And so more recently, I became a digital designer, right? If you want to check out some more of my work, you can go ahead and click on my personal web and check out my personal website there at AMCG Studio. But I will show a bit of my early work, right? So when in being in design, a lot of times we look back at our previous work and we just cringe. We're just like, oh, that's so horrible, right? But I think in goal setting, right, it's very helpful to look back at where you've come and see where you're currently at right now, right? So like the band Oasis said in their song, don't look back in anger, right? So really looking back at your work and not having a distaste in your mouth, right? So this was actually like one of the very first 3D renders that I ever created. I think this is actually the very first one, right? So when I first made it, I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is like the greatest thing I've ever made, right? But looking at it, it's not very good. It's like, you know, anyone could just hop in a 3D program and probably make this today, right? So how did I go from a very, very basic render to achieving my goal of photorealism in 3D products? That's what I always wanted to do. I wanted to make 3D stuff that looked real, because I thought, if I'm not going to make it look real, I might as well make 2D, which isn't the case, but that's just what I thought, right, at the time, right? So here's some of my more recent work. Headphone concept, and here is also a Babesta shoe concept that I did more recently. So I was able to achieve my goal of creating photorealistic renders, which was my ultimate goal a few years ago. And now that's not my goal. I've got more sophisticated goals now. But how did I go from that very first basic render that I created to making something that I actually really like showing people and that I'm proud of, right? By setting goals, right? Exactly what I'm talking about today, right? So a preface before we get into the actual process of goal setting, right? In regards to turning your visions into reality, right? We all have these lofty career goals and aspirations that sometimes seem unattainable, right? But I just want to preface that with time and effort, all things are possible, right? As long as you're putting in consistent work and time, it will always pay off, right? So I think the most important part of goal setting is realizing that any goal that you set for yourself is likely possible. Even if you set for yourself the goal of, I want to be the greatest designer in the world, like that seems like a really crazy goal, or one of the greatest designers in the world. It seems like a really crazy goal, but it's actually possible if you actually make a detailed, actionable plan and take steps towards becoming that, right? And so the initial step to doing that is making stuff no matter how ugly it might be, right? In regards to designers, I think what stops us from pursuing our goals isn't that we can't do it, or that it's super hard, or the fact that it's uncomfortable. It's just we're uncomfortable with making ugly things, right? I find that with a lot of designers. I know that's one of the problems I still have to this day. You know, I think it's one of those struggles that you kind of have throughout your design career, right? So let's get into it, right? The process of creating attainable goals, right? Phase one would be self-assessment, taking a not so hard look at yourself, right? I remember talking to one of the partners at our organization at Click in one of my biannual reviews. And I was just saying, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, and I was just being really, really hard on myself. And one of the most informative things that anyone has ever said to me is when his name is Derek, he was like, you know, just don't be so hard on yourself, you know. And you know that you shouldn't be so hard on yourself, but when someone else says it to you, it's like, oh man, I am being kind of aggressive, right? So that's just something I want to preface in the self-assessment, right? Because when you start analyzing where you're at and where you need to go, sometimes you can be hard on yourself, like, man, I really need to get there and I've wasted time, right? So let's start with self-assessment, some macro, right? We're going to go from macro to micro and asking ourselves questions that kind of get us into the process of establishing concrete goals that are attainable, right? So starting with some larger questions that you can ask yourself, right? Like the more as existential questions, right? So do I feel like I made the right choice in my career, right? So if the answer to this is no, there's no worry. You can always take steps towards a more fulfilling career, right? But this also ties in with the second question, what motivates me, right? Because when you answer the question of what motivates me, you might realize that, actually I did make the right decision. I do like, let's say you're an architect, right? And you feel like, oh, maybe I should be in another design discipline, right? When you figure out what motivates you, you might say, oh, architecture does motivate me. I'm just not very happy at the current position that I'm in, or I'm not very happy at the current organization that I am, right? So in feeling like in really analyzing if you made the right career choice, there are a lot of subtle nuances to it. Maybe you just need to shift a little bit in your role at your current organization, right? Maybe you don't need to completely overhaul what you do and become an interior designer, right? Maybe there are actionable steps that you can take otherwise, right? So that's why it's really important to know what motivates you. Also, in general, what motivates you is definitely going to change over the course of the year. So it's important to periodically keep a pulse check on your current motivators so that you have that self-awareness within your career, right? Also, it's important with these questions, it's important to literally take these questions and write them down, right? You have to write everything out, right? Because if it's just floating in your brain, it's not really come to the physical reality yet, right? So it's going to make it a bit more unattainable. It's going to make it a bit harder to reach that goal if it's just floating in space somewhere. So with all these questions, I would say really write them down, right? And also I would say these aren't the only questions you can ask yourself. These are just like general idea kind of questions you can sort of ask yourself, right? So the next one would be, where am I at now and where am I trying to go, right? So this is the part where you really start being honest with yourself and really aware of yourself, right? So for a long time, like I was in denial about my typography skills. I was like, oh, they're not great. I knew they weren't great, but I was like, oh, they're enough to like get me through things, right? But when I really became honest with myself, that's how I became a much better web developer, right? Web developer or web designer, excuse me. Because probably about 80% of web design is text and typography, right? So if you don't really nail that on the head and really get that as perfect as possible, your designs are never going to look as neat as they could, right? So I had to be honest with myself at one point and say, wow, I really need to tighten this up, right? Another macro question to ask yourself is, where do my priorities currently lie? So are you on Netflix all the time, YouTube binges? Are you on Twitter and Instagram, or some sort of escapism, right? But also not everything that you spend your time on is escapism. Maybe you have sincere priorities, right? Maybe you have a family and kids that you have to spend time with. Maybe there are other things that are really important to your life that you have to spend time on. But it's important to get a pulse check on where those priorities are. And a lot of those priorities, like if there are kids and stuff like that, of course, you don't have to get rid of them. But kind of analyzing your days and saying, okay, how can I shift my time a little bit so that I have 20, 30 minutes a day to work towards this goal, right? Because really that's all you need is 20 or 30 minutes a day. So now we're going from macro to micro. So getting more specific within our goals and asking ourselves more specific questions. So how confident are you with your skills, right? So you might be a really, really good illustrator, right? But you're just not confident in your skill set, right? So that's going to 100% change and shape your goals, as opposed to someone who has zero illustrator experience and they have to learn all the basics, right? They're going to have to learn tutorials and take courses and things like that, right? Getting a pulse check on your confidence is going to impact your goals, right? So let's say you know a little bit of illustration and you are a really good illustrator, but you just don't think you're that good, right? So you might spend your time learning new illustrator courses and setting that as your goal. Let me finish this course, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? But what might be a better alternative for you is just executing on your already existing illustrator skills, right? So an alternative goal to that, besides taking a course, a more relevant goal for you if you're in that situation would probably be, okay, let me make one illustration per week, right? Let me just execute on my skills and that way I'm becoming more confident. So that's why confidence and how confident you are with your skills is an important goal, is an important question to ask yourself, right? Because it can help aid your process of getting to where you'd like to go a bit faster, right? Another question, how soon do I want to accomplish my goals, right? So how long will this take me? How much time do I need to dedicate to this each day? And how much time can I dedicate to it, right? So there's really no rush with most things, except like, it's all in about how quickly you want to do it. Let's say you want to get a promotion at your job really fast. Then, okay, you dedicate more time to it. Let's say it's not really that big of a rush. 20, 30 minutes a day is perfectly fine to get you to where you need to go to accomplish a lot with your goals, honestly, right? So really doing a pulse check and really seeing what pace you want to set for yourself in accomplishing your goals. I will say a lot of the times we put a lot of weight on our shoulders to really do things very fast. When a lot of the times if we take a step back and try to do things more slowly, we actually get to where we want to go a bit faster because there's less pressure on us, right? Also, from here, you get to the very, very specific question where you really start to log out and set the pace and the coursework or curriculum for what you need to get to those goals, and asking yourself the question of what skills do I need to learn, right? So this is where you really start getting specific, right? If you're an architect and you want to become an interior designer, this is where you start asking yourself, you start doing research, like what skills do I need to learn to become an interior designer? What information or resources can I use to help me improve, right? And when you start finding these resources, you realize, okay, this is a general idea of what I have to learn. You can start writing that down, maybe find a course related to what you need to learn. And then from there, that's when things really start getting specific. So you take that one course, and then maybe you figure out, oh, I really want to be this sort of an interior designer. So these are the skills I need to learn for that, right? And this is where things get really, really specific, and you start picking up momentum with that, right? So that's how you got to go from setting macro goals to micro goals, right? These are the kinds of questions that you're going to ask yourself. Whew, okay, so that was a lot. So after you've asked yourself all those questions, you might be feeling a bit down, right? Because it's uncomfortable. It's not very comfortable to look at yourself and say, hey, I'm weak in this area. Hey, I'm not very good at this. Hey, I need to improve with that. I'm wasting my time here and there. It's a very uncomfortable thing, you know, to really analyze yourself in that way, right? But part of setting goals and acting on those goals as a designer is having to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And bringing back the Oasis song once again, don't look back in anger, right? Every day is a new day to work toward your goals and make a change. So don't be so hard on yourself for what you did or did not do in the past, right? So if you're looking back like, oh, I've been designing for 3 years and my work still isn't very good, that's okay, because now you know where your weaknesses lie, you know exactly what you need to improve on, and tomorrow's a new day to work on that. So now we're entering phase 2, getting specific, right? So like I said, anything is possible with specific, actionable goals. And this is where you look at making SMART goals, right? So what is SMART? Goals that are specific, right? They're measurable, they're attainable, they're relevant, and timely, right? So if you were to say something like, I'm going to be one of the greatest designers of all time, right? Like that's where you see like a lot of gray area, because that is technically an attainable goal. But if you're not sticking to the other parameters of the SMART method of like being more specific, taking measurable, actionable steps to making that, and doing relevant things towards becoming that in a timely manner, then you're not going to get there. I used to say to myself all the time, I'm going to be one of the greatest 3D artists of all time. And then I really had to take a look at myself, because I would only be doing 3D like once a month. And I really said to myself, like, how is that ever going to happen if I'm not even doing this consistently? I do this every here and there, and I'm just being like, you know. So really make sure that your goals are SMART and not just some, you know, random thing that you're throwing in thin air and not really putting action behind, right? So like I said, you want to write everything down, right? This is the part of the next step where you're getting even more specific, right? So here I have 3 different overarching objectives. An example of a shorter term objective, a medium term objective, and a long term objective here, right? And I also have some examples of actions you can take to achieve those objectives, right? So let's start with graphic design, right? Which is the shorter term one. So in graphic design, let's say your overarching goal in your graphic design career is you want to improve your graphic design skills and become a proficient illustrator. So proficient at illustrating, not proficient at working in Illustrator, though maybe you're trying to accomplish both, right? Actions you can take to accomplish this would be I have purchased an Illustrator course on Udemy that I will finish by November, right? So that's specific, you've got a deadline to it. But also with things like setting deadlines for courses and stuff, it's important to remember you might sign up for a course that's like 2 hours of content, but often the time of the course is not how long it's actually going to take you to get through the course. So a 2-hour course might take you a whole month to get to, right? So kind of as you work through courses, you can realize like a good pace for that. So don't set a deadline that's super strict or super constricting, not going to give you a lot of time with doing that sort of thing. I know I used to do that a lot. Another action would be to spend 20 minutes a day using Procreate, right? Just drawing in Procreate. And another action that's similar, that pairs well with the 20 minutes a day in Procreate, is every week I will finish an illustration, right? So if you're doing 20 minutes a day, that's 140 minutes a week, which is about 2 hours. So that's giving yourself, okay, in 2 hours that I'm drawing each week, I'm going to come up with a finished illustration product, right? So it's actionable. If we go back to the other slide, it's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, relevant, and it's timely, right? Now let's go to a medium-term goal. This is a goal most people have, right? I don't know anyone who doesn't want to get promoted, but maybe you don't, right? So a job promotion. So this person's goal is, I would like to advance to a senior level position at my agency, right? So some actions to take to get there. Check in regularly with your team lead on your progress, right? So when it comes to career goals and business goals, we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, but it's really important that you know where you stand within your organization and you know where you stand like with your team leads and different things like that, right? So if you have annual check-ins with your bosses, maybe take an effort to step out and check in more regularly with different people or other people within the organization to get a pulse check on how you're actually doing. That way, when your reviews come up, you're not shocked like, oh, I didn't know I wasn't performing well, right? So it's really good to like network within your organization and talk to those people to get an idea of where you're at, right? Another action to take, improving my soft skills, working on becoming a better presenter by practicing my elevator pitch, right? So as designers, like you might be the world's best designer when it comes to the hard skills of design and creating beautiful things, right? But you also have to have the soft skills to get higher level positions within design, right? So let's say you really want to become better at speaking so you can give presentations and reach that senior level position, excuse me, right? So practicing an elevator pitch on something you like let's say you want to talk an elevator pitch on why your favorite food is the best food, and you do a 60-second elevator pitch, and it's something you like talking about, it's related to your goal, it's an easy action to take to become a better speaker and develop those soft skills, right? The last action for this goal would be to take on more leadership within the company and the team, right? So finding ways to show your bosses and your team leads that you can handle leadership, right? That you take the initiative to be a leader, right? Within that. Finally, we have the longer term goals. So a lot of the times our long-term goals keep getting pushed back and off to the side because we're like, oh, an entrepreneur, I would like to, the goal here, the objective, I would like to open my own design studio. Oh, I'm going to do that in 10 years, right? But there are certain things that you can do today, even though you know you're not going to just open your own studio tomorrow, right? So you can network and attend conferences to gain connections. You can set a goal for yourself. I'm going to read 3 articles a week related to the industry trends. So that way I'm up to date and I know what's going on, staying relevant in the field. And you can also take the initiative to find an entrepreneur mentor, right? So you're not trying to start a business now, but this person, just watching them and watching them over time, over the course of years, will definitely give you a good idea, good instincts for developing entrepreneurships and knowing the steps you need to take for that, right? Now we're getting to phase 3. This is when it actually starts getting hard, right? Because it's very easy to just open up a journal, have your journal write, answer those questions that I put there, right? Answering your own questions, finding out what's best for you, right? It's not even super hard to make an action plan. It's a bit more difficult than just asking questions, right? But coming up with that action plan and writing specific goals for you to do isn't super hard. But phase 3 is where we lose people, right? This is where most people are like on an upward trajectory and then taking action, right? Because this is where we actually have to do stuff, right? So taking action is building momentum towards reaching your goals, right? So like this guy here, he's jumping on the golf cart, it's moving. He's taking action. I'm sure he's very scared. You see that? But also something I like about this GIF, there's a metaphor here, right? You see how I don't think the average person could just come and run up and take action and just jump onto a golf cart, right? Surely he didn't just, this is not his first time doing this, right? He probably took smaller steps towards getting to the goal of jumping on a moving golf cart, right? He was probably like jumping on ledges, jumping over bushes, doing his little parkour thing before he said, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna jump on this golf cart today, right? And this works for design too, right? You can set this goal of, I'm gonna design a realistic product render, right? But if you just started doing 3D and you don't have the basics of doing 3D, you're probably gonna not make it on the golf cart, right? If you were this guy, you'll probably fall and maybe hit your head or something, right? So your goals should be relevant to where you are in your career. Like this guy's parkour career is probably very serious, right? Let's go. But yeah, with taking action, the good thing about taking action, it's like a train. So when a train is coming down the track, it has momentum, right? That's why the gates go down to stop cars from going through, like driving through a train track way before you can even see the train, because the train is going so fast, right? The more momentum you have, the harder it is for you to stop, right? So when you take action and you empower yourself, it's just building momentum, and it gives you that extra push to accomplish those goals, right? So there are a lot of different ways you can empower yourself besides just, we're designers, we're sitting on our computers all day. There's ways to do other things that build your momentum and empower you, right? So you guys are always doing the first one, attending conferences, right? Expanding your network, right? You guys are doing both of these right now while being at Denver Startup Week, right? Other things you can do to empower yourself is taking courses, right? So Udemy, Skillshare, YouTube courses. And also knowing what empowers you might be different for you than it is for other people, right? So Skillshare is an amazing platform, right? And I used Skillshare for like a year and a half, but I noticed that when I was on there, I wasn't accomplishing as much as I could because Skillshare was very overwhelming for me, right? I would put like 10, 15 courses into a playlist and say, I want to do all these courses, right? Because I had this endless subscription that I pay for yearly or monthly, I didn't really think about like the cost of it. It was just like, oh, put as much in, learn all of this, right? But where I am now, what I learned works best for me when it comes to taking courses is using Udemy personally, because I'm physically putting my money towards that course, like one at a time. And that way I'm more focused on the course. I know, okay, I have to complete this course first. Let me get through all of this before I add another one. So that's just what works for me. Whereas someone, you guys out there might prefer Skillshare because taking one course at a time, maybe you like to skip through and learn bits and pieces of information, right? So that might work for you. Also something else, I've got a magazine here, right? Something that's really helped me sharpen my 3D skills is reading, right? So like I said, a lot of times as designers, we're sitting at our computers all day. And a lot of the times I don't like watching videos, like, because a lot of tutorials you have to watch videos, and that's very, very overwhelming, right? So reading is something that I like to do. So when I've developed so much more, really sharpened my skills in 3D when I really started reading magazines and things of that, like, because it's something that's fun for me to do. I really like doing it. It gets me away from the screen, and it's like a diverse set of actions, right? So when you take diverse actions towards your goal, it's just building that momentum, like I said. And the last way that I have on the slide to empower yourself is to create no matter how bad you think it looks, right? That's kind of the motif throughout this whole design goal setting thing, is really creating no matter what you think it looks, right? All right. And something that's very, very underrated, phase 4, we have having a support system, having people hold you accountable, right? That's a very, very important thing, because when you have other people there, it just motivates you more. So before, when I worked in the professional design field, I didn't really have anyone to motivate me. So I was kind of just swimming in circles, right? Because I didn't really know what I needed to do. I didn't know what skills I needed to develop. I had no one to hold me accountable. So it took me a long time to develop myself, right? And become a good designer, right? But when I started working in my field, that's when I started meeting people. Like I have my team lead. Her name is Emma. She's really, really great. So what I love about Click Studios, we don't just have like annual check-ins with our big bosses every year. We have, with our partners, we check in with them twice a year, so it's biannually. And then quarterly, we check in with our CCO on our design team. Then also within the quarter, every 3 weeks, I check in with my team lead, Emma, who's Emma, I was talking about. So in checking in with Emma every 3 weeks, I really know where I stand. I'm talking to someone very frequently. I'm setting micro goals for myself, and I have someone that I have to answer to, right? Emma's not mean. She's not going to be like, oh, you didn't do this and be hard on me, right? So, but she is good, but it does still give me the incentive, like, okay, I know I'm going to meet with Emma, so let me feel like I've done something within the last few weeks so I don't feel, you know, down on myself, like, man, I didn't do anything in the last few weeks, right? So if you don't have this built into your organization, maybe try scheduling this, right? So reaching out to your team leads or reaching out to your CCO and saying, hey, can we meet up this week? Can we talk about where I'm at, right? Or other coworkers, maybe you talk to other people that are in your same level in design. Maybe there's someone else at your job that you have a buddy system with your goals with, right? Or just a friend. Maybe you're not in design yet, right? Maybe you're trying to work to become a designer, and so you don't necessarily know someone in the industry, right? That's probably the hardest part. Or maybe you're just like, I don't know anybody that could be my support system. Some things that are helpful with that are LinkedIn groups, right? So at Click Studios, I'm one of the few people that does 3D there, so I don't really have many people that I can talk about 3D with that can give me insights and tips on that. So even though I don't necessarily know people in my real life, there are things that I join, like LinkedIn groups for 3D, like Cinema 40 is a program that I work in a lot. So I join those LinkedIn groups. There are course forums. If you're part of a course, you could talk to people in there. Those are really helpful ways that, some really helpful things that you can do to kind of find people and find that support system, because it is really helpful for what you need to do. So here's a topic that people don't really talk about. How do I know if I'm setting a wrong goal? Is it possible to set a wrong goal? It's a nice goal, but it's wrong, right? So when it comes to setting goals, right, I don't like to use the term wrong because it has such a negative connotation, but there are certainly goals that can get you to your destination a lot quicker. And there are certainly goals that are kind of missing the mark. So with your personal goals, I think there's absolutely no such thing as doing the wrong thing. So goal setting is an iterative process. So it adapts as you develop, right? So maybe you thought you needed to take this course and it turns out that that course wasn't what you really needed to take, but that's okay. You still learn some knowledge and you can use it in some way, right? Now, when it comes to your business or professional or career goals, this is a bit different, right? I won't say that you can set the wrong goals within your career, but organizations do benefit when employees have clear goals that help meet the overall business objectives. So an example of this, at Click Studios, we have a longer term goal of implementing 3D within our workflow, but it's not something that was very imminent when I first started, and it's still not super imminent now, right? But when I first started at Click and I was a junior designer, my goal was, we really have to implement 3D here. I have to do this. I have to get this done, right? Whereas my shorter term goal was, I want to get promoted from junior designer to mid-level designer, right? So I was spending so much time working on 3D and this and that. And it's not bad. I don't regret it at all, because it's also a personal goal of mine. So I was excited about that. But when it came to the organization and implementing 3D into the organization, that's just something that's way farther down the line. Whereas goals that I should have been setting for myself and working on more frequently at that time, in relation to my job and my actual career within my role within Click, I should have been setting more goals for working on my typography, more goals for working on my graphic design skills, right? So more things that are relevant to the organization that's going to benefit the organization in the immediate term, right? So there's not necessarily a thing as setting a wrong goal, but you should be mindful of the goal that you're setting and what type of goal you're setting and who is it benefiting, right? Because if you're trying to progress within your organization, you want to get a promotion, you have to do something that's overall benefiting the organization, right? And not just something that's benefiting you. Whew, okay, that's a lot. So goal setting as designers can be stressful, right? So I just covered a lot there. But just in general, in designers, we have to learn something new every single day, right? There's always a new program, there's always a new skill, there's always new trends coming out within design. We have to keep up with industry's trends, we have to keep up with so many things, right? So I just want to acknowledge within this presentation that goal setting as designers can indeed be very, very stressful, right? So if you're feeling overwhelmed, or if this is a lot of information for you, yes, I agree. But as designers, we do have an advantage when it comes to setting goals, right? That other people might not have. So what is the design advantage, right? Within our everyday life, our job is based around setting goals, right? This is the advantage of designers, right? So let's say I'm building a website out. In order to build a website, I don't just build a website, right? Or not build a website. I don't just design a website. It doesn't just happen like my boss doesn't just say, here, design this website and it's built, right? As designers, we go through briefs, right? We have to work through projects. So if you're designing websites, you start with a sitemap, right? We're given okay, you're gonna build a website for this healthcare organization, right? That's the first step we're given, right? That's like our big overarching goal. From there, it's broken down into smaller things that are gonna get us to where we need to go, right? Once I'm given a brief, we have to build this platform for this healthcare organization, right? Then we will go to a sitemap, right? So we get specific with what we want to put into the website, right? So that's the next goal. We have to create a sitemap with our content strategy team, right? Once we create the sitemap, then we go into wireframes, right? So we build things out. We see how things are working. We see if this is working for us, right? So this whole process, we're setting micro goals to get us to our ultimate end goal, right? This is no different from what you're doing when you're setting your own personal goals to advance in your design career or to advance as a designer in general, right? So as designers, we have this advantage because this is our everyday thing. This is what we're doing every day, right? So if you can view goal setting as the design process or the design system, or view it that way, it makes things a lot easier, right? It's nothing different than what you're doing every day when you're going through your whatever kind of brief, right? If you're an architect, if you're building out a building, the building doesn't just get built, right? Somebody has to draw it out, right? Somebody has to come up with the concept. You have to know how many rooms that you're having within, each apartment, right? So it's exactly everything that I just talked about is what we do every single day, right? Okay, so some quick tips here before I open up for questions, right? We're gonna open up for questions. So feel free to start dropping some questions in the chat if you have any from this session. We're gonna do about 10, 15 minutes of QA. But before we get to that, just some quick tips to kind of wrap things up here. It's important to remember that goal setting is meant to be rewarding, right? This isn't supposed to be I have to do all these things, I have to answer all these questions, I have to take so much action, I have to set so many goals. No, goal setting is meant to be like, okay, I really want to watch myself grow as a person. These are the things that I need to grow as a person. These are the things that I need to grow as a designer, right? So remember that, right? And not being so hard on yourself. Remember, this is a rewarding process, right? The next thing to take away from this, seek knowledge, not results, right? So when you seek knowledge, right? When you're seeking knowledge and not results, I think this is really, really important because for a long time coming into design, I was like, okay, I really have to learn every single detail of every program. So that would be more of a result. Like I have to know everything about Illustrator, right? But when I'm designing websites, I don't need to know everything about Illustrator, right? So if I were to take a 10-hour beginner course on Illustrator, there would be so much stuff that I'm going through in that course that I don't actually need, right? That's like, okay, it's good to know, right? But I'm never actually going to use that in my work, right? So really seek the knowledge that's relevant to your design industry and your design skills and what you're trying to do and not the result, right? And not like so focusing on the knowledge and not the result, right? And like I just kind of hinted at, focus on the skill, not the program, right? So if you're so focused on, oh, this is program, right? So when I first started 3D, I was like, I have to learn Cinema 4D, right? And then I started branching out and learning different programs. I started learning Maya, I started learning Blender. And when I really started looking at other 3D programs, that's when I really started learning the actual, like I said on this slide, the actual knowledge that comes with 3D, which is universal, right? No matter what 3D program that you're in, you're doing the same thing. You're just having different tools to get to the same result, right? And that's something that's really important. Focus on the skills you're developing and not the program. Focus on commitment and not motivation, right? Every day you're not going to be motivated to go out here and start designing, right? There's going to be days when you rather just watch Netflix, right? So if you're going off of, oh, I'm going to do this when I feel motivated, you're probably never going to be as motivated, right? As you start getting momentum, that's when you start feeling motivated because it's like, oh, I want to complete this project, right? But when you have commitment, you're saying, okay, I'm going to do this for 30 minutes every single day, no matter what, even if I'm not motivated today, right? I'm just going to sit here and do it for 30 minutes. And that's when you really start building that momentum. So yeah, that's what I have for you today here. I'm going to see if we have any questions here. Really quick, we have about 14 minutes left. So feel free to throw in some questions in there in the chat if you have any questions. And I'm gonna answer some here. So a question from Mary, I'm gonna read out here. Do you have other pursuits that you spend time on to fulfill your creative drive? I'm referring to skills that don't necessarily fall under career building goals. Absolutely. I think in the creative field, we absolutely need to do things that are not design related. So something that keeps me creative is actually skateboarding. So that's what I do when I'm not sitting at my desk. I like to go outside and to be free from the computer. It just keeps me creative because in being in skateboarding, like you have to have some sort of creativity. Some other things that people do, there's a lot of people that like, most creatives like to go to like art museums and stuff like that. But it might be something very specific to you. Maybe you like to paint, or I think for most digital designers or people that do stuff on the computer, it's some form of creativity that's getting away from your computer, right? So like playing an instrument, right? So I'm a drummer and then I'm learning guitar now. So that's something that helps keep me creative. So that way, when I come back to things, I feel inspired. Also fashion. I really like looking like, I know Instagram isn't the greatest thing, but like I only follow art pages on there. So I like looking at like footwear design and stuff like that. And that inspires me. So when I come to websites, like I saw like, oh, this is a cool color pattern I saw on this footwear and Instagram, and maybe playing around with those colors. All right, we got one more question. Feel free to keep putting some questions in there if you have any. This is from Yvette Bell. Yvette is asking, how important is formal education as a designer? So it depends on the kind of design that you want to do. Honestly, it's not super important. I think a lot of places will say you have to have a bachelor's degree, or some places will say, oh, you just have to have a bachelor's degree, right? It could be in any field. A lot of job listings say that you will have to have a bachelor's degree in design or in X, Y, and Z, right? But a lot of the times with job listings, they just put a bunch of stuff on there, and it's just about a list of the optimal candidate in the ideal world that has everything. But realistically, no one's going to check off all the boxes, right, that come with a job listing, right? So I would say it's more about having a skill. As designers, it's more about having a good portfolio. That's the first thing they're going to look at. That's the main thing that they're going to look at, is your portfolio, right? So if you don't have a formal education, like from a university, right, I don't think that's super, super important depending on what you're trying to do. But maybe getting certifications, right, just to put that on your resume. But having a really, really good portfolio is ultimately the most important thing that you can do as a designer. So formal education is not super important. Cool. Does anyone else have any other questions? If not, that's all that I have for you all today. Yeah. So, okay, another question. What tools do you use for creating a schedule and holding yourself accountable? This is from Laura. So I struggle with this, right? Because there's so many tools out there, and like, honestly, if I have things written digitally, I'm never gonna do them. Like I tried using, what's that one platform? There's one platform where it's like a digital to-do list. I can't remember the name of it, but I tried doing that. And it actually doesn't work for me. So what works for me is keeping in my career journal, I write everything down and I do the standard basic to-do list, and crossing that off makes me feel way better. So when I have that and I can see it physically, it's a lot more real to me than having it in a digital space. Also, something that was really helpful to me, Udemy has this tool where it's basically a goal calendar. And so it'll tell you like 1st through the 31st, and it's just empty. And you can write whatever goal you want on there for each day. And I said, I don't know what to do for this, because when I get too specific with things, I'll never do them. So I kind of have to be somewhere in the middle between specific and broad. So for me, on that Udemy calendar, I wrote, for 30 minutes, I'm going to do this course for 30 minutes a day, and not 30 minutes of the course material, but just 30 minutes. I'm going to sit down from 9:00 p.m. till 9:30, right? And then once the calendar works so that it's like an accurate PDF. And then if you've accomplished that goal that you set for yourself, then boom, it puts you can click that box for the day and it puts a green check mark. And that just motivated me so much. I was like, yeah. And just doing it 30 minutes a day, I was like, yeah. And so doing it 30 minutes a day actually turned into, I once talked with my boss and I said, I want to design 8 hours a day here at work. And then I'm going to go home and design another 6 hours. And that was really crazy, right? That's a crazy goal. That's an insane amount of hours. But when I really started setting those little goals, like 30 minutes a day, from doing it 30 minutes a day, now sometimes I will design for 16 hours a day, not because I'm like, oh, I'm forcing myself to do it, but I'm really just a part of a project and I'm really enjoying it and I really want to finish it and I'm having fun with it. And that's my motivation, right? So yeah, I got a couple more questions in here. From JC, any tips for how to explain in an interview that you'll be a great employee, but just don't have tons of experience you're proud of yet? I think in interviews, it's not necessarily about experience, right? So especially when you're an entry-level candidate, they kind of know that. So I don't think you necessarily need to talk about experiences related to design per se. You can talk about other experiences like, hey, at my other job, I performed this way, or I was really good at doing this, just showing them a lot of the basic skills, right? Showing that you work hard, that you're dedicated, that you're willing to put in the time and the effort. It's more important than, oh, I designed this or I designed that, right? So I think a lot of interviewers are really looking at your personality and who you are as a person, also the skills that you bring, but not necessarily in an entry role, oh, she can design, X, Y, and Z Mount Everest, right? Kind of a thing, but more so like, okay, these are the skills that are going to be useful and we can kind of like get this person to ultimately make certain things, but it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to only talk about design experience in an interview. Let's see, we've got a couple more questions here. This question says, I'm a few years post-grad, but I haven't worked with clients. I've been stoked about and really want a new job that I can be more excited. Oh, I think this is more of a comment. A few years post-grad and I haven't worked with clients I've been stoked about yet. And I really want a new job that I can be more excited about my work. Yeah, so I think everyone kind of goes through that where it's like, even when you really love your job, like I love my job, but some days it's like, no, I'm not that excited about this project. I think it's a process, right? Especially when you first get into design. Just the fact that you have a design job is amazing because it's a hard field to get into. There's so many amazing designers out there, right? There's a lot of talented people, right? So I think, the first few years that you really come in, there might be you might be at a job where you're not super enthused with what you do. But I think over time, as you develop your skills, then you can kind of get to a place where, okay, I realize I really like doing this sort of design more. The skills are transferable. I'll transfer to this place. They've got clients that are more aligned with what I like to do. So I think that definitely gets easier as you come along in your career, for sure. So yeah, that's all the questions that I was given. So I want to thank you all for coming out and attending my session. I believe in my profile, I have my LinkedIn information. So feel free to go in on LinkedIn and connect with me on LinkedIn and ask any other questions that you might have. But yeah, once again, very, very thankful for everybody coming out today.